Good afternoon guys, my name is James. I'm here today to present to you a safety toolbox on delineated work areas. Whilst obviously I probably understand that this is not going to be a term that you're particularly familiar with, hopefully at the end of the next 30 minutes you'll understand the terminology and your responsibilities as an employee of this company and hopefully appreciate workplace health and safety a little bit more. So let's get started. I guess the first question for all of you is, does anyone know what delineation means already?
No.
Not at all? No. Alright, so delineation essentially is the establishment of a clearly defined border between high-risk and low-risk work areas. Delineating work areas is especially important for tasks such as unloading or loading vehicles, operating forklifts, using dangerous chemicals or tools, or working at heights. As you can see in this picture, it's a segregated walkway away from manufacturing equipment. Here, we're in a slightly different work environment, like an online e-commerce store, so we don't really have the sort of fixed plant equipment that these guys have, but we do have forklifts, cardboard balers, and truck loading zones. Everyone following along so far?
Mm-hmm.
So why do we think that delineation might be important?
To reduce the risk of injury.
Okay.
With employees.
Yeah.
Pretty much answered it.
So, delineation is important because it prevents unnecessary interaction between vehicles, equipment, or pedestrians. Obviously, you can see at this company we have a one-way traffic zone around the outside of the building. We have pedestrians outside, couriers, vans, trucks, forklifts operating. We also share a site with other manufacturing companies, which means that there's always people around that may not be familiar with our traffic management plan. Delineation also clearly communicates safe walkways for everyone, including visitors and new staff. The reason a lot of this is marked and signed on the ground is because people may be visiting the site that may not be familiar with our internal processes and policies, and it needs to be as clear and obvious to them as possible. Additionally, it provides safe areas for staff to take breaks and complete day-to-day tasks that are away from high-risk work, dangerous activities, or construction. Understood?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, having said that, I've already touched on a couple of them. But what are some of the segregated or delineated areas that you've seen on this work site?
The high-reach bays and
Yeah,
down.
good. Yeah. We have those in 2 or 3 different places in the premises, so it's good. Anything, Joe? Cool. So, some examples that we've got here: the inbound loading zone and leveling dock. We actually have a leveling dock that bridges the gap between trucks and the actual receiving platform. The outbound loading dock as well. We've got couriers coming in and out all the time. People moving loading zones, moving forklifts, cages, parcel cages, which have a considerable weight amount of them. Forklift zones, high bay racking, as you said, Laura. The cardboard baler exclusion zones. So, just as a good example test, in our internal policy, what is indicated by the yellow and black line in the image on the right?
And out of bounds, I'm not running out of bounds area, but
Is that a high-vis zone?
Yeah, so I guess that answers this question too, but I guess the point here is that it is you are entering a delineated area or a high-risk work area where the rules may be different, and essentially for us you need permission to be in there because, as you can see, there's forklifts, things held at height, and there's a lot more risk exposed to you than you would traditionally have in a normal work area. So I think you've already answered this one, John, but what special rules do we have internally when working in this area?
Well, yeah, you must have authorisation to go over that line.
Yep.
And you must be wearing safety vis, high-vis safety vest.
Anything else that you can think of? How might you act differently in this area as opposed to traditional work environments?
be more alert of what's
Great.
going on.
Increase awareness, yeah.
Yeah. So how should we interact with delineated work environments? Obviously, we've just touched on how to be slightly more alert and aware, being conscious of what other people are doing in the work area, the activities of vehicles, and I guess looking after the safety of both yourself, the people around you, and anyone that might be visiting the site. So, as another test, how would you interact with the markings on the road here?
As a pedestrian or a driver?
As a pedestrian.
Only cross there.
Okay. Obviously, it's,
Actually stop and look to see if the
Yeah.
cars have seen you.
and even when you're doing that, you're still going to be alert and aware of your surroundings, but that's the only place that would be crossing the road. Because we do have heavy machinery, heavy equipment, external factors, companies that aren't us operating in this area, that's as part of our traffic management plan. It's the only place that we're crossing the road. Right, another one. What's the difference between this area and this area?
We have trucks entering the left side.
Yeah, great. And how would you act as a pedestrian in this work zone?
Stay on the fence side of the line.
Yeah,
Unless you had to go across and then you
yeah, unless you're qualified, authorised, and wearing the appropriate PPE.
And to go through that gate, you have to be wearing a high-vis vest anyway.
Okay, great. So I guess what we know so far is that you may not know what the term means, but you are familiar with a lot of these concepts about exclusion zones and high-risk areas. Again, we just touched on this. This is a separation between the high bay racking area where forklifts operate and where receiving or general activity could occur. Jumped ahead. One more thing that I did put into this slideshow when we were doing a walk around the site earlier on is there's actually an exclusion zone around these gas canisters. That's the only place that gas is stored. It's in a security cage. Why do we think that might be?
Because they're dangerous.
Yeah, because they're dangerous.
High risk.
Yeah, there's a higher risk to people in that area that if you've got flames or hot work or any other activity that might not act well with these propellants. And there's lots of things like that, like exclusion zones around fire exits are there for a reason. The markings that we have on the floor are there to give you a very obvious indication of how you meant to act in certain areas. So just quickly, some basic tips and tricks on how you would act in a delineated work environment. Always use designated doorways to enter and exit the warehouse. For us, we've got one entry and exit point, which, do you guys know where that is?
Right there.
Door. Always using designated walkways. Our entire car park area has a separation between pedestrians and foot traffic. Go across the crossing, follow on the opposite side of the road, stand on the far side of the bollards, and traffic will be to the left. Staying a safe distance from parked and moving vehicles. That's forklifts and machinery as well as cars, trucks. Using a bit of common sense too. Not walking out of the building past a blind corner straight across the road, having a look. So temporarily blocking off an area can prevent someone from unknowingly walking underneath material that might fall from heights. So I guess another point here is that delegated work areas can be ad hoc as well. They won't always be fixed to the building and they may depend on work that's happening in the area at the time. So if there's construction happening on a new facility for the building, there may be change arrangements. It's important to be aware, as a supervisor or manager, you need to communicate with staff very clearly around changing work environments or changing these work zones. And as an employee, be aware and observant about some changes that may be out of the usual. So always keeping designated walkways clear. There's no point asking people to walk on designated walkways if they've got equipment stored across them. Always act proactively to prevent potential hazards. Again, so it loops back to, it's not just about protecting yourself or other people, protecting the whole work environment. Just by, if you see something, report it to your team leader and manager. If you believe that high-risk work areas are not adequately isolated or controlled, please report the issue to a team leader or manager immediately. All makes sense so far? Okay. So what sort of incidents can occur when high-risk areas are not effectively segregated?
Death.
Yeah, in extreme cases, yeah. Anything else that you can think of?
Injury.
Yeah. Injury,
Like
lost
product
time,
damage.
yeah. Damage to fixtures, equipment, people, people taking time off work due to injury. There's all sorts of flow-on effects from, and they're so easily avoidable. So possible incidents in this list: collisions between pedestrians and vehicles, crushing from falling or moving objects, i.e. pallets falling from high bay racking or forklifts rolling or anything that's stored at heights. Falling from heights, so working on elevated platforms, exposure to chemicals or propellants, and being trapped during an evacuation due to equipment blocking emergency exits. That's a fairly obvious one, but it still happens all the time. So what we see often during daily safety walks, in some circumstances, you'll notice that there might be cardboard or pallet movers stored in front of doorways, which is obviously something we correct immediately. But if that happens during the day and there's a fire, we risk killing people because they can't get out of the building. So, just to drive home the point a little bit, so you guys can understand how important this stuff really is, we're going to watch a short video on the interaction between forklifts and pedestrians.
What you're watching is a recreation of a mishap involving a forklift and a pedestrian. From this viewpoint, there doesn't seem to be a logical reason why this mishap occurred. The pedestrian is walking along a marked walkway in plain view. The forklift isn't carrying a load that would obscure the driver's view. However, when the camera is set up to catch the driver's view of the same scene, all that shows up is an empty walkway, until it's too late. There are
To mention here is, while a lot of these things might seem like common sense and people are going to see you, there's always extenuating circumstances that you may not be able to see that they can't see. This is why it's so important to use safety walkways. Obviously, for both forklift operators and pedestrians, it's so easily avoidable, just sticking to these areas. And for the forklift not to cross areas that they know.
two important points to be made from this incident. One, a pedestrian can't assume the forklift driver sees him or her, and second, they can't assume a forklift is just like any other vehicle. These points are important to make because of the very large number of mishaps that occur. Tens of thousands of pedestrian injuries are caused by forklifts every year in the United States. Measured against that, there have been no reports of injuries to forklifts from running into pedestrians. To help understand why all these injuries happen, we should go back and look at the assumptions. People tend to assume that forklifts are just like other vehicles, including the one they drove to work that morning, except maybe a bit more nimble since they zip back and forth. And that implies that they aren't especially heavy. It also assumes that they steer and move like automobiles and can stop as quickly. People also assume that, like the other vehicles they're familiar with, forklift drivers can see just about everything around them. The fact that none of these assumptions are true is what gets those tens of thousands of pedestrians injured each year. Take the assumption about what forklifts weigh, for example. Even without a load, they're a lot heavier than they look. This forklift, even empty, weighs about the same as these two automobiles. To allow a forklift to carry a heavy load up front, each one has a heavy counterweight in back. On this model, the counterweight alone weighs close to the same as a small pickup truck. An electric forklift has a smaller counterweight because the battery provides part of the weight. We staged a demonstration of how heavy a forklift battery can be. They didn't even get the full weight of the battery on the back of the pickup before it started to lift the front wheels off the ground. And carrying a load, of course, forklifts are even heavier. This concentrated weight translates into much more severe injuries to pedestrians, much more than people would predict would happen if they hadn't seen the actual results. To illustrate this, we reenacted another mishap, an example of the fourth leading cause of pedestrian injuries, being pinned between a forklift and something else. The driver checked to the right, then backed out. The pedestrian was just coming out from between other forklifts. If this were to happen with a passenger car, it would be a very nasty injury. But to visualize the kind of injury from a forklift counterweight, we replaced Debbie with a turkey drumstick, and she wasn't insulted. Here the forklift is traveling slower than it did in the actual mishap. That's simply too much damage to ever heal. That's why so many pedestrians struck by forklifts have to have limbs amputated. Here's another reenactment of a pedestrian forklift mishap. This incident led to the pedestrian having their foot run over, the ninth leading cause of pedestrian injuries from forklifts. This time, we replaced Debbie with a red trash can before the forklift started up again. And now we'll use a pair of drumsticks to replace her feet, to show the effect of being run over by a forklift. Again, if we judge by what would happen if this injury came from a heavy vehicle, we'd predict a nasty injury, some surgery, some weeks, and a cast. But the same mishap involving a forklift? Notice in the drumstick run over by the forklift, part of the bone is simply missing. Severe enough damage that it probably leads to an amputation. There's another point to make from this reenactment. A characteristic of powered industrial trucks, forklifts, that increases the chances of one hitting a pedestrian is the way they maneuver. People are used to seeing how cars turn a corner. The front end swings around and the rear follows the same path. But the steering wheels on a forklift are in the rear, so when they turn a corner, that heavy back end swings out. Many of the pedestrian injuries, the struck by and the pinned between forklift and something else, happen this way. Related to that weight and maneuverability is the fact that powered industrial trucks simply can't stop as quickly as other vehicles. Of course, these characteristics don't exist out there just by themselves. They team up with those very bad sight lines to create the severe hazard to pedestrians. To help people appreciate how limited the forklift driver's vision can be, we set up a display at our forklift rodeos. We encouraged people to sit in the driver's seat to spot the pedestrian. It's a very worthwhile exercise, one that any employer could easily duplicate to help create a safer workplace. So these are some of the characteristics of forklifts that contribute to the number and severity of injuries to pedestrians in the workplace. The other causes of injuries have to do with where and how forklifts are used in the workplace. The pace of work, the repetitive nature of work, and unlike other vehicles, they share the workplace with pedestrians, and that leads to complacency and familiarity. And again, pedestrians don't understand how limited the sight lines are from a forklift. Pedestrians struck by powered industrial trucks are the most common causes of injuries. However, there are two other causes that bear mentioning here. Powered industrial trucks striking an object which then strikes a pedestrian. For example, knocking things off the top of a stack or knocking the whole stack over. A load fell or lowered on or pinned a pedestrian. The purpose of this presentation has been to increase people's awareness of the hazards presented by sharing the workplace with forklifts. To help translate this awareness into your own personal safety, we'll give you 5 rules to remember. Never assume the driver sees you. If you can't make eye contact with the driver, you're in a dangerous position. Keep looking around. Always look both ways. Give forklifts room, and just stay away from them. Every company is supposed to have rules for forklift drivers to follow. Protect pedestrians, enhance safety. But rules by themselves can't protect pedestrians from injury or death. Because even if the rules say that the driver is always at fault in a collision with a pedestrian, the drivers are always the ones who get to walk away uninjured. Thousands of pedestrians each year are not that lucky.
And
Rich, you there? Rich?
Hey Jack, I'm just about finished here.
Rich, I need you at 14 now.
Okay, I'll be right there. Hey Peter, I'm out of here.
Yeah, somebody come and get that bin without me. Welcome to touchdown landing. Hey, that was a bit close.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Hey Rich, you get lost or something?
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Every year in North America, there are hundreds of accidents involving lift trucks, and near misses account for thousands more. But with lift trucks, a near miss is really a near fatality. Because if you're a pedestrian who gets in an accident with a lift truck, you will very likely end up dead. Why? Because the driver of the lift truck can hardly see you. That's why more fatalities occur with lift trucks in forest products manufacturing than with any other single piece of machinery. Think about it. Lift trucks were originally designed to only stack loads, while transportation was handled by other forms of equipment. Modifications and attachments have allowed us to use lift trucks for other purposes, without changes to the basic design. But these alterations have created serious visibility problems for the lift truck operators, cutting dramatically into the already limited fields of vision.
I had a piece of paper in my hand and we were sort of looking down and we were discussing something and walking towards the office.
That's when the visor flashed in front of right in front of the machine.
And then I got hit harder than I've ever been hit before, right from the bottom of my back to the top of my head. Just a big slam.
The first words that went into my mind were, "Oh my God, Ian."
If I hadn't hit exactly where I hit and been held up by the fork, you're going to go under the machine.
When he was walking in his path, I was driving in mine. It just so happened that his path kept him in line with that boom.
You know, like if I'd have bounced down instead of bouncing up, I mean, I could be talking to a chalk line right now.
One of the more common problems for drivers is that while carrying large loads, they must drive in reverse. But a lift truck's controls and seating are designed for driving forward, not reverse. This forces the operator to sit and drive in uncomfortable and awkward positions. And when the operator does drive forward, he's forced to try and see between bars, chains, and cables. So it must be clear that pedestrians play an important part in preventing lift truck accidents. As we've seen, it's entirely possible for a pedestrian to be on a collision course with a lift truck and remain completely invisible to the operator. Also, pedestrians can move in and out of an operator's field of vision in seconds, with potentially fatal consequences. Most pedestrian fatalities occur when the driver's visibility is at its worst, when a lift truck is traveling forward, with or without a load. Drivers are concentrating on what they're doing. They're not expecting pedestrians to wander out into their path. There is one cardinal rule that pedestrians must follow when traveling near lift trucks. As a pedestrian, it's your responsibility to make eye contact with the driver. Then, confirm the driver is aware of your presence by waiting for him to acknowledge you. It's a simple two-way communication technique that can save lives. It's hard to believe, but even large lift trucks can be invisible, especially in noisy working conditions. You can never be really sure if a lift truck is working in your area, and you can't rely on sound as a warning. A lift truck can be almost silent when coasting. So, whenever possible, it's important to stay out of these danger zones. And remember, when work volume increases, so does the danger. Bright or blinding light can also make visibility poor, especially at night, hiding a machine from view. The reality of lift truck operation is that driving conditions aren't always perfect. Adverse conditions like dust or rain can seriously affect a driver's ability to see. And it only gets worse at night. Day or night, wearing a high visibility vest, hard hat, or other high-vis clothing will make you more visible to an operator. Road grades affect stability and stopping distances of lift trucks, while poor road conditions can seriously affect the stability of lift truck loads. We've discussed eye contact and acknowledgement for moving on foot around lift trucks, but here are some other important safety tips that can ensure pedestrian safety. Drivers expect to see pedestrians at crosswalks, so whenever possible, use them. But don't assume the driver can see you. His vision is just as limited at a crosswalk as it is anywhere else.
Did you learn anything specific from that video that you didn't know already?
The first bit, when I couldn't actually see the pedestrian at all.
Yeah, and you don't think of that because I would guess most people's perception of a forklift is that it has excellent visibility because there's no windows and the frame's very thin, but like everything, you kind of got to think of the worst case scenario. Someone might be distracted. It can all go wrong very easily. So forgive me, just trying to work this out. So, just in closing, delineated areas protect employees who work near or are taking breaks near vehicles by providing areas that vehicles and equipment cannot enter without additional permissions. So as we saw in that video, it's not just a case of pedestrians sticking to like specific areas, it's also important for machine operators and managers and other people that are responsible for performing high-risk actions to not cross into these areas and to be aware of pedestrians, because at the end of the day, pedestrians are some of the most vulnerable people. So don't take shortcuts across the road. Use a lot of walkways. As you can see, we spoke about before, there's a pedestrian crossing directly outside the front door of the building, and it can be somewhat of a blind corner. So it's important to walk slowly, check before you cross the road, and not to leave the walkways. They're there for a reason. When taking breaks outside, sit within designated break areas to allow equipment and trucks to have enough room to complete their tasks safely. And remember that walkways, break areas and smoking areas are there to keep you safe. So do you feel like you understand the importance of delineated work areas before?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have any questions for me while I'm here? Good. Thank you for your time. I'll circulate a form as a verification that you've taken the toolbox. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, James.